Welcome to Jim Sells the Suncoast, your go-to podcast for all things real estate on Florida's beautiful Suncoast. I'm your host, Jim, your friendly neighborhood real estate agent, and each week we dive into the vibrant world of buying and selling homes while embracing the laid-back lifestyle that makes Florida such a paradise. In our episodes, we'll explore the latest developments shaping our communities and spotlight the incredible companies and industries that play a vital role in real estate, from movers to mortgage brokers, title agents to insurance pros. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a seasoned seller, or simply dreaming of that perfect beachside bungalow, we've got insights, tips, and plenty of local flavor to guide you. So grab your sunscreen and get ready to soak up knowledge, laughs, and a little sunshine as we navigate the Suncoast together. Let's make your real estate dreams a reality, one episode at a time. And good morning to the Suncoast. Today it's my pleasure to have Reid McCullough on. He is the epitome of your neighborhood lawyer. He's been in the area for quite a while, been practicing law for 11 years, focused on real estate, and he makes the complex palatable. When we're talking law, maybe palatable is the right word, and brings a little bit of passion to the dispassion. So welcome, Reid. Thanks for being here.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate getting the chance to share what I do, what I've been working on lately with.
Fantastic. I know when we look at real estate law and real estate in general, the experts can really contribute quite a bit because most people will do 2, 3, 4 transactions in a lifetime, and you might do that in a week. So there's a lot of insight that can be gained from just what's going on. So I've got a little bit of list of questions. Hopefully we can walk through some of these and we can expand on them and see what kind of insight can you bring to the table on that to help the average person who's going through this transaction.
Well, man, good.
All right. First one, let's talk HOAs, homeowner associations. Every HOA is a little different. There's a lot in there. But what should buyers know about purchasing a property within an HOA? And how can they avoid potential legal disputes with the association?
Absolutely. When people are thinking about buying an HOA, they're doing one of two things. They're applying to a homeowner association or a condo association, which share a lot of the same DNA, but their authorities derive from two different statutes.
Great editor.
Fantastic. If you're applying to homeowners association, what we should expect is a comprehensive financial disclosure. Many people are broadsided by the depth to which the associations want to ensure that they can collect money. Often uses bank statements, credit checks, criminal background checks, and students that must be paid up front. This is one of the biggest things I see people flow when they're coming to be closing people, is that they've done all their due diligence, they got the property appraised, the lender's happy, but they just never turned in that $150 check to the condo association or the homeowner association. And as a result, the homeowner association hasn't done anything. One of the biggest things I would admonish people is not just to have your financial stuff ready for the bank, for the lenders, the client, but also to make sure that the community knows who you are and that they've got your check for $100 or $150 that they need to do their research on to make sure you're not credit.
Okay. So that's something particularly your agent should be making sure that you're aware of what's going on. So what else in an HOA? What kind of power do they have and what kind of limit do they have when you've moved in? And hey, I want to paint my house purple.
Yes. The rules and restrictions. So part of every contract for sale in an HOA comes with certain seller's disclosures, which include copies of the HOA rules and regs, their budget. Generally, the managers of HOAs, even if you are an owner in the community, will answer some limited questions for you. So your plan is to, let's say you want to move in and build a shed or a detached garage. They'll give you the broad strokes as to what you can get here within the rules.
Right.
I would caution any prospective buyer that's looking to make significant exterior modifications. It is like navigating a landmine, minefield, pardon. The many associations have architectural review committees, which are like municipal government in many respects, in that they have promulgated rules that they want the community to follow in terms of how it looks and feels. And they have plenary power to say, really to the spirit of the community, which sort of leads you down the road of starting a purchase by suing your HOA, which is not a good place for anyone to be. I generally discourage lawsuits against association in all of the most assumed circumstances.
Right, right. You like that neighborhood for a certain reason or for a certain aesthetic, and they want to maintain that same thing. So it's good and bad, I guess, that it's going to prevent people from changing it.
There are some changes in recent years to allow for superseding rules to override an HOA. For instance, Governor DeSantis last year signed some legislation that allows homeowners to provide hurricane protection for their houses. And the HOA isn't really allowed to argue with you your storm shutter through the style of your hurricane impact windows, for instance. So there has been some retraction of power from the HOAs in favor of the state and in favor of the individual homeowners. But by and large, fighting with an HOA is almost always an uphill battle. I generally stack up the cost against the cost of buying a comparable property somewhere else.
And then to your point, you have certain rights. You want to protect your house from damage. That's great, but you can't leave them up year round. They're going to make sure that we have that aesthetic when there's not something imminent.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's slide over to disclosures and misrepresentations. How can buyers ensure they are fully formed about a property's history before closing?
Oh, that's a great question. By and large, what that means is that unless the seller is also the builder, there's been continuity of ownership. So new construction, you've got a pretty comprehensive idea of what's going on with the property. But after that first owner, you generally have to take someone's word. If they accept the seller disclosures and you say, okay, you do check not applicable or no knowledge to many things, receiving the seller's disclosures. And I'd find that the best you can do is your own research. I wouldn't recommend anyone buy a property without an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're buying half, sometimes it's worth getting an appraisal, especially if you're considering like a for sale buying owner transaction where nobody involved knows the nature of the property or the nature of the market conditions. It's worth, previously, first and foremost, it's worth having the advice of a licensed realtor to guide your valuation and your estimate or that offer. When you're considering the nature of the property you're buying, the physical characteristics, I generally treat dollar disclosures as about river paper they're printed on. In my personal purchases in the past, I always do, to the nth degree, my own inspections, my own walkthroughs. If it's worth even taking a contract, if you've been making improvements to property, taking a contractor to those inspections, suspect Joe from ABC Contracting Companies here, he's going to tell me what he thinks the interior renovation is. It's going to need to update his 1950s kitchen. Always, when it comes to dollar disclosures and how to really get a feel for the property you're buying, the number one thing you can do is to hire your own research.
Okay. So when you're looking at a purchase that's going to could be several $100,000 to $1 million plus, spending $1,000 on inspection and appraisal is a pretty smart investment going into it. Because you have third party that somebody that's not invested, they have no skin in the game, can step back and go, here's what I think it is objectively that.
When it comes down to the reports, because there's so much that the part of the property that you just love. You think about latent water rate, for instance. You might have water that's trickling down the interstices of the walls. You wouldn't see that on the face. It doesn't show on the paint until it really starts to rot. But many inspectors have infrared cameras that would show you any moisture or water leaks within the property. Similarly, if you're doing a deal and you don't know what the value is, you get an appraisal that says, this property should be going for $20,000 or $30,000 less. Then not only have you paid for the appraiser's time, but you might have saved yourself a pile of money and given yourself a strong position to negotiate.
Yep. And I think having worked with some inspectors before, they go places that I wouldn't normally go, and they have the knowledge that I wouldn't have.
Well, the visit for
so when looking at a seller, we talked about the disclosure and how to take that. But what are the legal consequences for a seller who fails to disclose material defects of a property?
The downside can be dramatic. So if you're selling a property and you know that back in 2005 when all the hurricanes came through that property flooded, and you don't indicate that on your seller's disclosures, then if a buyer subsequently experiences problems with that, whether it's rot or subsequent flooding that they could have known about or could have anticipated if they knew the property flooded in the past, your damages don't just run to the cost to make it right, but you could be on the hook for a lot. There's punitive damages are capped at treble compensatory damages. So it costs $50,000 to fix a defect, but you knew about that and you fraudulently failed to disclose. The court could find you liable for $150,000 in punitives, as well as the cost of attorney's fees. Suddenly, a fix that was palatable during the contract and negotiation phase ultimately becomes like the cost of another house. Most homeowners are not inspected. Most homeowners are not contracted. The verdict to prove that someone knew or should have known about a defect and affirmatively failed to disclose it is a pretty high bar. So when buyers come to me and say, hey, there's a plumbing problem in my new house, and it wasn't disclosed to me by the seller, I said, okay, and what do we have any evidence, or do you think you can find any evidence that the seller knew about it? Without that collateral evidence, because you very rarely get direct evidence from. I don't write an email to their banker saying, oh, I deceived these people because I covered up the error. Without that circumstantial evidence, it's a pretty high bar. Is
Right.
The bar is you either intentionally conceal the defect or you made representations with reckless disregard for the truth and falsity of the statements. If you just, it's a very high bar to clear to get that fraud, that's specific intent necessary to get those damages. Oftentimes, simple negligence might get to their player. Whenever I'm talking about the cost of a lawsuit, that's going to be a financial choice. A time too. So when I'm thinking about what it costs to get relief from a court, I'm thinking about that compared to the cost of fixing it. Because there's no guarantee that a seller still has money for transactions done.
So I think what I'm hearing is on major issues, flooding came through like with Hurricane Debbie and it wasn't disclosed. That's something we should talk about and possibly investigate further. Or your home inspector might find that and that's something you negotiate before you close.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it comes to it and you find out that your roof was unpermitted. The cost of a new roof is, you're looking at $20,000, $25,000, sometimes a lot more. That's worth asking. Hey, Mr. Seller, when you had this roof done, you didn't pull any permits and it wasn't inspected. So I need to throw a new one on there in order to not get the violation. That's the kind of thing I would push for, and might even push pretty hard for. When a rubber hits the road, whether or not you want to drop $10,000 or $15,000 to get the seller in front of it, then that's a financial decision. Because at the end of the day, a judgment in court is not money in your pocket. It's just the right to collect. One of the things, the expressions we have around the office is, went to the line for yes.
How should a property owner handle boundary disputes or challenges within easements on their property?
The answer is the worst lawyer answer in the world. Is depends on who's asking. As far as a boundary dispute with your neighbor, in the nexus of legal reality and real politics, because if you sue your neighbor, you get to live next to it. You sue the one of your moves, which is not fun. The answer I would have is depends on the nature, it depends on who's asking. You're talking about, let's say there was a seller has a utility easement crossing the middle of the property and it completely derails your construction plans because FPL wants the right to throw power line across the street. That's the title claim, especially if it wasn't disclosed in the corollary document. Title insurance claim is, my house, I have lost the value of my purchase by X dollars because of this recorded easement. I need to be compensated. And the underwriter looks at, and if they can't terminate or relocate the easement to make it clear for you, then they pay the value of your claim, which is the depreciation in value from when you expect it to be purchased and paid for. You would also, I would estimate, probably have a Davis claim against the seller, because that the defect in title that was known to the seller but unknown to you becomes an issue, and the seller's not around anymore, so you're not pissing off the neighborhood. If we're talking instead about the location of a fence, that's the much more common. My neighbor's got the other side of the fence facing me, and he built it on my property. That's a conversation I'm having with a lot of people. The first thing I would suggest is, all right, get a survey and make sure you're right. Because sometimes that causes those conversations to go away. I remember you again, and I was like, I guess why don't you on his side of the property? First, if it turns out I think the best thing to do is just have everybody sit down for a nice conversation. I'm entertaining a couple of those in my office. Hey, if there's a fence on your side of the yard, you have to draft something up that says, okay, we acknowledge that your fence is on this property. Nobody's pursuing adverse possession or anything like that. Generally, anxiety of adverse possession, just an escalation of existing neighborhood tensions. Maybe there's something else there. That's key. I understand that you're looking at 8 inches of boundary line. Soil shifts over time, and each property was yours and there was a flood or something. I don't know. No. Or maybe the fencing guy is not a licensed surveyor. It's certainly not. Keeping the forest for the trees, remembering that it's better to have a neighborhood where people like you. 8 inches of dirt on one side of the fence.
Let's talk about that a little more and what that is and how that impacts people.
Absolutely. It's a shorthand from a Florida Supreme Court case where they rule that a seller of property who feel knowledge of a leak from a fire is liable for the damages as a result. And I believe including indirect damages. And if you're able to establish that intent, the requirement of some affirmative acts to conceal the defect, so knowledge or constructive knowledge of the defect, like you or should have known this was a problem that you were saying about it. A latent defect that isn't immediately apparent. The latency of a defect is something that you can't see when you walk into a house.
Okay.
That stove is on its face. That is an obvious defect.
But maybe access to the lake behind you ran through the yard and nobody told you.
That would be a defect that if you thought you were buying the clean title with no easements whatsoever, and it turns out your neighbor has the right to skinny you in your pool. A little bit like the mullet, but beach access is a real one in the pool. And that does get litigated in hardly. There's been a case comes from Sarasota just recently. Actually, related to the longboat. There's a couple of beach accesses there that I didn't know about. Latent defect that causes no damage is not something you would litigate. Frankly, something would come to light first place. Didn't cause any problem. But one of the elements, every lawyer loves tests. There's seller knowledge, the latency of the defect, the causation of harm, and the action. That's the 4 steps to recovery. And if you can't get all of those, then you don't get damages. So it's important to think about all of them when you're trying to decide whether or not it's fire to do with stuff.
All right, let's talk a little bit about maybe some real estate myths and
Yes. You have to do writing if you get anything out of the presentation. Verbal agreements are wood and paper they're printed on.
Yes.
There's the statute of frauds is what controls this in Florida. Our statute of frauds is a catch-all term that covers a bunch of different areas of law, which says that agreements aren't good in the absence of a written instrument. And the Florida statutes are explicit about is that an agreement for the sale and purchase of real property must be in writing and by the party. It doesn't need to be notarized, but it needs to be in writing and needs to be signed. And it needs to contain material terms. A contract that doesn't have, if I sit and say, Jim, I am willing to sell you my property on Burlington Street for And you say, great. And I text you just confirming that I'll sell Arlington for $1 million. And you say, acknowledged and received. You can argue that we're inferring material terms, inferring a reasonable timeline, inferring a standard closing cost, standard yada. Right. If you're coming down to a lawsuit, if you try to sue me and say, hey, you promised to sell the Arlington for $1 million, yeah, when I'm done with the place 30 years from now, right? It's over this, that, and the other, and 6% for my legal fee. The court would generally find there was the meeting of the minds. That's what the farm contracts do. The as is and the residence, the contracts are sale of real estate. Farm contracts are so important because they are facially neutral, because they contain all of the necessary ingredients, all the secret sauce you need to sell and purchase a property. And everybody knows them. You're a realtor in Florida if you don't know common contracts. And as a result, and they give advice. They give regularly revisited as new stuff comes up. You talk to the condo assessment in the wake of the tragedy over at Surfside. Well, what'd you read stuff in the condo disclosure regarding milestone inspection, structural reports? The biggest red flag for purchasers and sellers of real estate is trying to enforce stuff that never made it into the contract and creepy custom contracts.
And I think that's why when people look at a contract and it's 21 pages and they're like, yeah, I read it, here you go. That covers all those nuances that you just talked about. Hey, when is this going to happen? Where is it going to happen? What are the terms of the contract? What are the contingencies, or what are the outs for anybody who wants them, or what are the specific terms? Utilizing something like that's been formalized and structured really protects everybody that's using it, because everybody knows what's supposed to go on.
Yeah.
And you're pointing on a custom contract, you're like, you didn't mention this, or what's the fallback on this?
It's a lot of like wholesaling investors, flip, as they're called. They love to have these group page contracts. And they're like, look, it's real simple. It's money for property.
Yeah.
They didn't, I would have seen one of those. They get a jail free card for the wholesaler whenever they want. They order the contract, they get all their money back, and you get nothing. And there's a complete absence of really important material terms. Like, hey, if this buyer defaults on the contract, what's my recourse? What can I do? If the escrow agent discovers a title deed, what happens? And the farmer contract seems daunting to the layperson. This 15-page contract, because I'm worried it's going to lock me in some kind of alarm. The thing is, contracts, the as-is bar in particular, is broadly buyer-friendly. It allows the seller to have certainty that after the inspection period and after the contingencies of this buyer, I know I'm getting a sale out of this. And the contingency periods are listed right there.
Yeah. Gives a little surety to either side. You can go in going, hey, sign the contract, but I get to check everything. And once you've checked everything, the seller says, we're going forward.
Be nice. Yeah. And these verbal agreements, kind of less. If somebody makes you a verbal agreement, then I would go about your day until you see something in writing back. And if what you're writing does not say FAR bar on it, I will run down the street to your favorite local lawyer, and this guy gave me an offer, but it's on a weirdo custom contract. And the lawyer's worth his salt, or first salt. What they should do is call up and say, hey, dear creepy investor, we'll be happy to help you with this contract. I can afford a bar home.
I think the other area that this comes in, and I had this discussion with somebody earlier, which is interesting, is when you're in the middle of negotiation counteroffers, a verbal counteroffer or an email really isn't going to cut it until you see the contract. So you may think you've got something coming in, but until that contract comes back, everybody signed, there's nothing done.
Unsigned contract is no good. There's this good conversation about missing initials. And I think you go the road of frustrated. You change a material term, that is a counteroffer. The contract that negates the initial document until that portion is signed. However, if I get a contract that has no changes to the material terms, it's signed by both buyers and sellers, let's say the buyer does an initial page fee for whatever reason. It just wasn't populated on the document. I've got a lot of questions from realtors as to whether or not that changes the effective date or whether or not that's a fully executed contract. The contract signed at the end by the parties intending to be found constitutes an effective contract. But you should still chase down that and just so there's no argument or disagreement regarding the
Right.
language on that.
What do you think, in your experience as a lawyer dealing with the legal aspect of this, is the biggest misconception people have about real estate law?
Oh, let's see. It probably shares a lot of the same DNA as the verbal contracts. I would say the biggest misconception people have brought in my office is when they're going through the contract process and they've really got something extra to the closing table. I'll sit down. I've got the whole contract, all the agenda, I've built closing documents for them to review, email that to them, and coin toss whether or not they're looking at it or not. They sit down and they say, "Where's my extra $5,000 for the furniture?" And I'd say, "Well, they were walking through the property and they told me I was getting an extra $5,000. No. Did they write that down in?
Yeah.
So oftentimes, a lot of what my job is reconciling the expectations of the party that went through this whole contract process and all these conversations with realtors, landlords, color representatives, and distilling that into the legal documents that say how much you're paid and what you're getting. And that's where I rest the fulcrum of that trend. I mean, balance was competing interest.
Fantastic. Reid, thank you so much for coming on here today. 30 minutes goes by quick without realizing that there's so much to dig into. We'll go into my next set of questions because I think we only got through 4, but worth it.
Oh, God bless. Let me tell you, and to anyone else watching, it is really my pleasure to help people understand these complicated and lengthy verbal agreements and these written agreements, distilling them into plain language. It's really enjoyable for me. I grew up, I was working in a metal shop when I was a teenager. I thought I was going to be a carpenter when I was a young adult. So I'm going from that background to the practice of law. It's really left with me a deep appreciation for people who don't do this every, for people who really just want to explain in plain English what they're signing up for and what they're getting. I'm happy to help, Jim. I look forward to our next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that wraps up another sunny episode of Jim Sells the Suncoast. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the ins and outs of buying and selling homes here in our beautiful slice of Florida. I hope you found valuable insights and a little bit of inspiration to help you on your real estate adventure. Remember, whether you're looking to buy, sell, or simply soak up the Suncoast lifestyle, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so that we can keep shining bright together. Until next time, keep dreaming big and let's turn those dreams into a reality, one home at a time.